Oh, wait. He's here. He's here.
Yeah, he was brutal.
Recording in progress.
Okay,
Tell you
great.
later, remind me.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the Yarmouth Select Board meeting of August 19th, 2025. Tonight, we are going to interview 3 candidates for the Director of Community Development. If we could please start with the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We have 3 candidates tonight, and I think we're going to get right into it. So if you want to, unless the board has anything to discuss prior, we'll get right into our first interview. While our human resource director goes and get our first one. So the format is each of us will ask questions. We'll ask the same question to all 3 candidates. You're allowed to have a free flow of conversation and follow up however you'd like. But to be fair, we ask them all the same questions. And at the end of the meeting, I don't expect we take any action tonight. We'll adjourn and we will put the appointment on the agenda for our next meeting.
Madam Chair, do you want us to each take a question from our questionnaire?
Yep, whichever one, whoever asks it first, well, that will be theirs until I'll mark it down who's asked what, and or if you want to ask your own questions, whatever you want to do, and then we'll, like I said, the next time it comes around, hopefully we'll have time for at least probably 2 questions each, but we'll have to play that by ear based on the time that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for having this special meeting to get this important process rolling. Good evening. How are you? Come on in.
Hello.
How are you?
Glad they gave you water.
That was a test, if you could tell it was really evening or not.
Question, is your glass half full or is it half empty?
There you go.
It's timed to last an hour. But thank you for asking.
Okay, well, welcome. For the
Thank you.
record,
Very
tonight,
happy. Excited to be here.
and we're glad you're here. For the record, our first interview is with Mr. Spiro Mitrakostas. Spiro, we're going to give you a few minutes to make a couple of opening statements, tell a little bit about yourself, whatever you want to use the time for, and we'll allow you a few minutes to
Sure, thank you.
wrap it up, and we'll get into questions after. Thank you. Thanks for being here, and thank you for...
Thank you for affording me this opportunity, and thanks for the process that you and the town's staff has been going through to get to this point. My initial reaction when I got this phone call was, how did this happen? This process started about 4 months ago in April, and I don't suppose any of the candidates had heard anything for a while, and then all of a sudden the process is beginning, and we were asked in for interviews with the staff, and then after we provided some information, got a call back and whatnot. So it is kind of exciting to be here, kind of strange as well to be in front of you, because I know most of you pretty well. I've worked with you in different capacities, served in the town of Yarmouth for a number of years in different ways, and we kind of all run around in the same circles. So to the degree that I can make a case for this, I would like to do that. This is a very big position, a very big job in town. It involves a lot of moving parts, engages a lot of people in the process. And on its face, it may not appear that my most recent professional experience lends itself to this. But at some point, you have to stop putting stuff on your resume, stop going further back. And some stuff fell off that you aren't going to be able to see in the information I submitted. Some of you may know some of my previous background, but I just want to give you a really quick update. The most relevant experiences I've had to what this position is came early in my career when I worked for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I worked in the governor's office, and I was eventually appointed to be the coordinator of economic development for southeastern Massachusetts, which is Bristol, Plymouth, and Barnstable counties. And they set me off on the task to figure out how to get stuff going in Bristol County, New Bedford, Fall River, jobs, business development, infrastructure improvements, all with the eye to improve the economic conditions of that area. And we didn't have a lot of resources, which is, in retrospect, kind of surprising, because it's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but they don't give you a budget, and they don't give you access to funding and say, go do this. They just say, go do it. And you have to figure out how to get that done. But we met with some relative success. We got a bunch of stuff going, and I was better for having gone through that process for a number of years. The next thing that happened to me was I moved over to a state agency, and I worked for this thing called the Mass Industrial Finance Agency, which provided revenue financing, bond financing for private companies. You would know it as Mass Development now, and their mission has somewhat changed a little over the years. But they brought me on to try to help them market revenue financing to private corporations. So I got public sector experience. I got quasi-public experience in terms of finance. And I decided at one point to just jump over the fence and start doing it privately. So another thing that's not immediately available on my CV is that I did private sector commercial industrial redevelopment. I joined a company to take over old mill buildings and rehab them into commercial enterprises. I mean, real estate, you try to figure out what the market is, you try to figure out what the need is for that community, and you try to redo that old space to make it function again for the betterment of the community. And that lasted for a few years, including a commercial development stint that I was, project that I was doing here on the Cape when the savings and loan crisis hit. And then we were kind of all stuck, standstill, whatever you were doing had to stop, which is, in retrospect, fortuitous, because I ended up coming back to the Cape at that point to finish that project, and then I never left. But the experiences I had up until that point, I said, I still got to serve, I got to do these other things. I can't just be building shopping centers and running businesses. And that's when my town hall experiences started between planning boards in Mashpee. I was the first EDC chair in Mashpee as well. I moved to Brewster and joined the finance committee there. Something else that fell off my resume was that I was also appointed to the Cable Advisory Committee for a year while we were renegotiating the contract with, which is now called Comcast, to make sure we kept the benefits that were afforded to us through that legislation. And then, as you can see from the information that is on my resume, just started serving all over the place whenever I could, including in the town of Yarmouth as the Barnstable, the Yarmouth representative to the Barnstable Airport Commission, served on the Assembly of Delegates for a term as well. But I never could not do something. So a lot of that stuff is there. I just wanted to make sure that you didn't think and you wouldn't be asked, why is this insurance agent coming in to apply for this position? That's just the last iteration of my professional career, from public sector economic development to private sector development to shifting gears to run associations like the Cape Cod Technology Council, which is a trade council, the Dennis Chamber of Commerce, which is a business council, and just constantly being engaged with all the different goings on between our communities and the Cape. Because we have a county commissioner here, I just want to say a couple of words about the county and how I engage there as well. Although Mark will forgive me for saying this, we've known each other for 40 years. We bumped into each other in 1985 at the Otis Task Force that the governor had me staff to try to figure out what our pollution liability exposure was on the base, and he was there also in official capacity. And ever since then, we've been kind of bumping into each other, and here we are again today. One of the most formative experiences I had was serving at the 21st Century Task Force with the county to look at the Cape Cod Commission to see what we needed to do going forward for its next iteration. It had been a purely regulatory enterprise up until that point. And then we sat down with them in a fairly broad-based representation of the community and what should happen there. And it's become more of a planning agency now, which tends to serve us all in terms of municipalities very well now. The information coming out of the commission is incredible. The data, the planning, the reporting, all of it. So in a recent experience just a few minutes ago, someone was complaining about the Cape Cod Commission. I was saying, you guys are getting it kind of wrong. This is not the way it is anymore. This is what used to happen. Now this is what does happen. So there is a path to take a municipal or public enterprise and make it better. And I was glad to have been part of that process. And the sum of all those experiences probably adds up to maybe you have enough experience to do something like this. Along the way, I managed a few businesses, hired and fired a few people, so there's that management aspect as well. I'm going to let you start asking questions because you know I can just keep talking.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. So we will start with Mark.
Very good.
His first
Do I have
question.
one question?
We're going to each ask,
at a time.
and we'll go.
Then we'll go around.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
please.
What do you see? First of all, Spiro, thank you for applying. Thank you for making it this far, and thanks for your interest and all the work that you do serving the town of Yarmouth. Very much appreciated. What do you see as Yarmouth's biggest challenge, or the challenges and biggest opportunities in the area of community development?
Is that on here, or is that for you, Mark?
That's from me.
Oh, we're supposed to only ask,
You can ask your own question.
Whatever, just have to be the same question for
Okay,
each.
it's all fair.
oh, okay, so as long as we remember, okay.
Let's make it a little personal because I live here. I've lived here for the last 25 years. I took a time out to move to the city and work in other ways. I grew up here. I went to school here. I came back to find quite a few friends that are still here. Maybe they've never left. But the challenge is, how do we get to continue to stay here, number one, those of us who would like to, especially those of us whose home this has been for the last 25, or in my case, 50 years. There's a challenge of working in this economy, which may or may not provide us sufficient income to be able to afford to stay here. And that's the crux of the matter. Can we fashion a business or a job or a career around earning enough money to pay for what it costs to live on the Cape? And with that, can I make that available to my children? The three kids that we just graduated from colleges and have started their career somewhere else. If they chose, like I did back in 1990, give or take, to come back here, could they? At the moment, even given their fairly significant salaries on the other side of the bridge, they probably can't. There's a barrier, and there's a sort of a prohibitive cost of entry to get back into living on the Cape. That's just the ante, so to speak. The ongoing concern is going to be, can you sustain that income level to be able to keep up with the continuing increase in cost to live here? And that's mostly coming from housing. Gas is gas, food is food, but if you can't afford the roof over your head, it doesn't really matter what the other stuff costs.
Okay, Dorcas.
Tell us about a time that you successfully managed a complex community development project. Please tell us about your specific role in the project, challenges faced, and the outcome, And what would you have done differently?
So I was similarly the first to arrive on the scene in Taunton in the early iteration of my career as state economic development official, given the charge to help Taunton build out their industrial park. My MO was usually go to the mayor's office, or, yeah, they were all mayors basically, and ask them what their priorities were, what they needed from the state in terms of resources and or really from regulation in some cases. And let's see if we can help you get there. And in the city of Taunton, it was this thing called the Miles Standish Industrial Park, and it had exactly 3 tenants in it at that point, but a whole lot of promise. And my task was sort of organize the state development agencies, and then with that, drill down into the individuals in those agencies that would be helpful, because you can't just sort of marshal everybody for yourself or for your project. And then individually sort of pick and choose the ones we needed to address a specific opportunity inside the park. So we had, for example, a potential tenant. We need to do a walk around. We need to find out what they needed in terms of financing or permitting. From the state level, along with my counterpart at the town level. It was a city-owned industrial park. As the park started to get tenants, it needed more roadway, it needed more water lines, it needed more sewer lines, it needed public assistance financially to do that. We added that over the next few years. But part of it was getting these other businesses who were just up the road on 495 or Route 128 to be interested in that. So it was a coordination. The answer is it was kind of a coordination process of who's got what that I need to get that project where it needs to be, so this guy can say yes and they can move on to the next one. And in one instance, it actually required federal legislation, which in retrospect, I wasn't really happy about trying to make happen or help make happen. Apparently, when industrial parks get federal assistance, there's certain things you can't put in them, like hotels. But the one thing that was really going to make that industrial park pop was a hotel. So if you're driving up Route 495 these days and you drive by the Mount St. Park, you see a Holiday Inn. I think it's still a Holiday Inn. It might have changed franchise. And know that that's there because of special legislation from the United States Congress to allow us to do that. We were successful in getting it. In retrospect, I'm not that thrilled I had to do that. But it helped then get the 5th, 6th, 7th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th company in there, because they would typically have salespeople and customers coming from other parts of the country who needed someplace to stay. And in 1980-something, you really didn't think Taunton was a hot spot to find a hotel room, except you had one right there. So we looked at it as a business amenity and part of the overall project. And that's kind of how I tend to approach things. If we see what the end result, what we want the end result to be, how do we get there? And then from that point, you work backwards to figure out what you need along the way. Today, the park is sold out. I mean, I left after about 3 or 4 years, but the park continued to sell out. They got additional land from the state in terms of an old state hospital next door to keep going. And I'd happened to go to Taunton about 3 years ago with the Mass Economic Development Council junket that wanted to show us the old Reed and Barton facility in downtown Taunton. I don't know if you've ever seen it, the old silversmiths from 100 years ago. And the original park developers were there. And they said, "You're still here? You're still doing this stuff?" And I was not in official capacity. I just really wanted to see what was going on in the region industrially after all these years. Those guys are still there. So maybe I am glad we did that, that piece of that puzzle, because it really helped.
Thank you.
Joyce?
Oh, thank you. Cape Cod has enjoyed several decades of international visitors, occasionally interrupted by a pandemic or a recession that was global. Now many international visitors from Canada and Western Europe are uncomfortable coming to the Cape because of a national situation that is not determined by the Cape. How would you strategize to differentiate Cape Cod as a place they can happily return to and that should not be on a boycott list?
As much as it falls into our purview, I mean, you may be just asking me as a hypothetical not related to the Community Development Office or even the Economic Development Office, but I pondered this question as director of the Dennis Chamber of Commerce. It wasn't so much international, it was why aren't the guys from upstate New York coming anymore, or why aren't the folks from Connecticut coming anymore? When we were sort of doing our surveys of where everybody was coming from. And we kind of had to devise a plan for the town of Dennis, for the Chamber of Dennis, the businesses in Dennis who rely on some of that business. And we actually kind of went out to find what was going, why that was the case. And we had just kind of lost touch, to be honest, that it wasn't any one thing that said, well, we don't want to go to the Cape anymore. It's just we weren't in their face anymore. We weren't in front of them anymore. We weren't promoting ourselves to them anymore. So we fashioned our marketing program for the last couple of years I was there to target specifically those two areas for that reason. So we did our marketing in Albany and we did our marketing in Hartford to sort of maximize the limited amount of money that we had to do it. Overarching issues like geopolitical, Harold Brown got married here when nobody knew who Harold Brown was. He became the Prime Minister of England at one point. I think he married somebody who had a connection to the Cape. So how do I get them back? If we're talking about Canadians, I would ask them to come here and get married, number one. Number two, remind them that this is the closest warm water beach to Quebec. That's still true. Canadians used to come here in droves. I first discovered them at Seagull Beach in the 70s as a kid, and at Veterans Park in Hyannis as a kid, because they had stationary barbecues and picnic tables there. And the Canadians weren't known to spend a lot of money in hotels and restaurants, so if they could barbecue on the beach, you would find them there. How do I remember that? Half of them spoke Greek, even though they were from Montreal. So a more sort of general way to answer the question is this too shall pass. They'll be back.
Okay, thank you.
Liz?
I'm going to go off the sheet as well. And I know that I'm hoping that all of our interviewees will be familiar with the LCP, the comprehensive plan, and the ambitions and visions of Yarmouth. So I will ask all of the candidates this question, but for Spiro, in keeping with that, is there a redirection for Yarmouth that you would recommend, knowing what we have illustrated or laid out in our comprehensive plan and in our vision sessions? Is there a redirection, big picture, long term?
I'm not sure I would call it a redirection. To the degree that I'm now educated on the LCP for a couple of reasons. I read a lot of it and listened into Kathy's presentation of it. Focused in on a couple of sections, housing and economic development, to sort of see what the specifics were. So I can't say that I find anything wrong with the direction. I think a lot of work goes into coming up with that overarching direction, and at some point you can't just sort of start chipping away at it, otherwise you're moving away from what you would have decided was your ultimate goal and objective. So to the degree that I would tweak it, housing looms so large, and it's going to take up so much time, energy, and resource that we have to be really careful to make sure we've defined the problem correctly. Similarly, we have to be careful to define our economy correctly. We're under the notion, I shouldn't say that. If you would ask anybody on the street what the business of our town or what the business of our economy is, they would all say tourism. But if you really drill down into the numbers, it's really not. So to organize your economic development effort around tourism, when it's really not the main thrust of your economy, then you're going to get more of it, but not necessarily. You may not necessarily be in a better position for it. Similarly, in housing, the approach we're taking to address our housing challenges, crisis, as the county might say, we need to be more careful of what we consider the root problem to be. If we keep saying that we need to build more housing, you're saying that we need to fix it. We need to approach it as a supply problem. We don't have enough housing. But if you crunch the numbers that the county is giving us through the data at the Cape Cod Commission, we've got a lot of housing. A third of it is not available to residents. So to add more housing to it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be adding more housing for residents. I am of the opinion that when you increase the supply of housing, you decrease the price for everybody, not just the people you want to help the most. There's just a spectrum or a scale of housing if you were to just stack it from, we have 200,000 units of housing on the Cape, from the most expensive to the least expensive. We're adding housing at the level at which we believe benefit our people the most, which is the lowest quarter or third. We're effectively bringing the price of the whole market down, which makes it a little bit more affordable for somebody to buy a second home as well. So you've added a home for a resident and inadvertently lost the home to a second homeowner. So I would like a more serious examination of approaching this problem through a demand problem. The reason we find ourselves in this position is because we can't compete with folks who are coming here with greater resources to buy a third of the housing for other purpose, second home purposes. Now, I don't want to choke the baby in the bassinet. That's not coming in here to do that, because I think we fundamentally misunderstand our economy as well. We're chasing commercial development on Route 28 because we think that's what our commercial base is. Our commercial base also includes second home ownership. So when you're looking at your commercial properties as being the guys who sell us stuff on Route 28, or provide us with activities for our visitors to do, or us for places to shop for our food, you also got to look at the homes that are owned by people who are using them as not necessarily businesses, but to accommodate themselves, if not others as well. So we get a whole lot of tax revenue from them as well. The challenge is they've taken that stock off the market, so we can't access it. So how do we, I think we can, there's a way to solve both problems simultaneously, but you got to look at the problems more critically. It's a demand problem in housing, and our economy isn't just based on the seasonality that comes with tourism. Is that reflected in the LCP? Not exactly. Can I reorganize a staff of 6 people to start looking at stuff like that? It's beyond my pay grade. If you guys agree that that's what you want to look at as the policy-making body of this organization we call a town, and you direct us to look at it that way, we will. If you're saying, don't screw with the business community, leave the tourism businesses alone, make sure the chamber's happy, and we'll go do something. We'll be fine. Well, I've worked for boards of directors for 18 years and bosses for another dozen years. I can give you best advice. I can give you what I think the data is telling us. I can tell you what I think the community is saying to us, but I would never just say, take my opinion and make it policy. You guys have to make policy that then I have to implement if you're giving me the charge of doing that in a department, as a department head.
Thanks, Spiro.
Thanks, Spiro. Looking specifically at our economic development department, I feel like we're at a really great opportunity right now to bring in a new director with all of the open positions and changes that we have going on. Having said that, where do you see opportunities? What specific structure changes do you think would be appropriate, or you would like to see or push for, so to speak, in that position?
So this is what I wake up at night thinking about, which is a very sad admission, I know.
I get it.
You really don't have an economic development, no offense to anybody in the room or otherwise, but we really don't have an economic development initiative driven by the municipality at the moment. We don't have a staff member that's dedicated to that, even though I did see a job opening for that back in January of '24. I don't think we've ever went forward on that. We don't, unfortunately, much to everybody's chagrin, we had a whole committee step aside and say we don't want to do this anymore. So yeah, it's a great opportunity to create exactly what you want in a community economic development committee and charge them accordingly. I mentioned in my interview process that it's a fantastic opportunity for the director of this department to be the chair of that committee. So let's really get a hold of this thing and make it do what we want it to do and put really good people on it to help you get there. Take the tourism funding component out of it, put that someplace else. That's a fairly administrative process. I don't want to give Bob more to do, but you could probably handle it in your office without it going through the committee process, if you will. But getting your hands dirty and going to do economic development, that's what I would want it to do. As a chamber director and pretty much every other position in an organization before that, I only spent about 50% of my time in the office. You can't do economic development in the office. It just doesn't, you just can't. So the department director, the head, needs to be in the office for a number of reasons, but eventually he also needs to be out. The staff needs to be out too. So I would push them out, whether their expertise in their program of work is housing, historic, conservation, whatever. You got to be out of the building to really do it right. So I would be pushing them to go out into the field and to meet the constituencies and meet the challenges face to face, see what it is that we're bumping up against once you leave the building. So I would want an economic development staff person who was not in the office, as well as a committee refigured to do pure economic development, and an emphasis on that. And the reason I say an emphasis on that, if you don't do the economic development component right, you can't do the housing component right either. Finance is housing. Economy is housing. You can't just sort of say, well, let's go do some housing. Well, if your economy that's declining or stagnant and you want to do more housing, it's just like saying, honey, I got laid off, but let's go buy a new house. It's not going to happen. So we need to build up our economy at the same time we're addressing our housing needs. And again, the economy is going to give us the incomes, give the incomes to our residents to be able to afford the housing that is somewhat out of reach at the moment from the competition we're getting from second home ownership. The data from the commission makes it really simple. As a matter of fact, I have a graph devoted specifically to this purpose. It takes two incomes. If you divide our income strata for our people who live in who work and or live in Yarmouth into two levels, upper and lower, it takes two lower level incomes just to rent an apartment. So one individual in a lower income category cannot rent an apartment. It takes two people from the upper income category to own or to buy a house. Our job is to take not necessarily these two folks and get them an apartment, or these two folks and get them a house, is to figure out how the families or the units, the economic units that are one of each, bridge the gap between rental and ownership. You have a stable economic community if you have a home ownership. And we're lucky we do. We got 2,000 apartments, about 10,000 homes. Might be a little off on that, but so we have a very stable home ownership community, but we would like people who need to transition from rental to ownership. That's where we should be offering our greatest initiative and assistance to. Because if you don't, those people are eventually going to leave your community because they're not going to be able to stay. One wrong financial move or one layoff and they're gone. So I would like to fashion our housing incentive programs around those people, and we do it at our own initiative. One of your housing consultants in one of the meetings I happen to go sit in on. I don't know why, I just do. My wife says this to me all the time. The reason you work is so you can do all this other stuff. Yeah, I do. I just got a need to do that. She was asked about the housing that's being done on Route 28 now. And she explained that the housing we're seeing developed on Route 28 now is the housing that the state is incentivizing. The programs that you're tapping into to get the subsidy to do the housing is exactly what the state made available, which is exactly what the state wants to see, but may not necessarily be the thing we want to see in the town of Yarmouth. So although that program's out there, although developers can access it and they want to try to, for lack of a better term, shoehorn it into our community, we have to have a competing program in place that says, never mind that program over here, we got this other program over here. And I'm not sure if there's going to be enough public resource or finance to do that, so we can, you can't just say, well, I don't want to use that program, I want to use this one. I don't make those decisions, we don't make decisions, the state doesn't even make decisions, a lot of that's just kind of federal flow through. But I know I can find, I know we can find ways to do this with other monies other than pure public money. There's a lot of private housing money floating around that we could refocus our attention and bringing into the community as opposed to constantly kind of going or defaulting to the state programs.
Thank you, Spiro. Mark?
Thank you. The job of the community development director involves overseeing and managing several divisions, offices, staff in the areas of planning, economic development, conservation, Old Kings Highway, Board of Appeals, community preservation, and the HUD CDBG program, just to name
7 out of 8.
So, talk to us a little bit about your background and your experience in managing staff as well as managing programs like this.
So that's the scary part of this position for whomever. Even an experienced person would find a challenge to managing that much. And although it's somewhat connected, it's a bit amorphous as well. When I hadn't managed a Chamber of Commerce, and I knew it was going to be more of a challenge than running a tech council. There's 167 members of your board of directors in a chamber. It's not just the 12 guys who volunteer, it's everybody, because everybody wants their specific need addressed. So I had to figure out a way to kind of come in there with a plan, not just sort of be reactive, but to be sort of proactive. And I happened on a professional technique called managing by mission. So we decide what's the mission of the organization, and then everything we do kind of gears itself to that. And it's not that complicated. It's about 3 or 4 steps. You need staff. The good news is this department looks like it has some really good staff. I don't know a lot of those people personally, but I know their work, and I knew Karen before she left, and I think it worked as a fairly good cohesive unit. And they're all quality staff people, managers of their own area of expertise. That's the good news. So you got a team. You got to get them to work as a team. Somehow you got to get your staff all working together and helping each other out. To a degree, that's mostly there. That's not going to be the hard part. Second step is kind of do a self-assessment. So where are we? What do we got for people? What do we got for resources? What do we got for finances? What do we have for policymakers, boards of directors, select boards, if in this case? And that's our sort of beginning part. What do we need if we don't have it? So let's make sure we get that stuff, because we can't go forward without it. The third step is sort of create a benchmark. It's what are the outcomes we're seeking to affect? Where are we trying to get to? We have the right staff, we have the right resources, we have the right policymakers. Through the policies you're issuing, as you're kind of telling us what the outcomes you want to see are, can we get there? So let's enumerate them and then figure out how to measure them. So as we're trying to get there, we're measuring them to make sure we're getting there, right? It's almost like the mile markers on a trip on a highway. And then when we get to the point of which we say go, we're going to do this, you have to sign responsibility. That's just the last part. You want to do housing, is it the housing staff member or the housing staff member in conjunction with somebody else in the office or in that staff that's responsible for that outcome? The environmental components, is it the COM people, the historic components? I mean, they're kind of obvious in this department who you're assigning these tasks, these responsibilities to, but there's a constituency for every one of these people that they have to work with, have to bring into the process, so they're naturally going to be the one to be responsible for that outcome. But collectively, not just that person, but this team, and then eventually the town administration are responsible. But for the sake of this example, it's that person responsible for the outcome associated to the benchmark, so it's going all the way back to the team. That's the 4-step process. When I had 2 people, it wasn't that complicated. When I had more than 2 people, it gets more complicated. When you have this much program of work, I'm going to be calling Bob a lot. I'm probably whining on occasion, like it comes with the territory. It's not something I'm afraid of. But to me, I don't know if it was too kind of circuitous, but you got to walk in with a plan of attack, kind of want to know what you're doing. You have to have confidence in what your plan is allowing you to do. And you got to have confidence that you're going to be able to get to the end point, because we can't just start building housing or going out and doing marketing for our businesses without understanding what we really want in return and what we want that outcome to be.
Kind of expanding a little bit on Mark's question. Staff retention is very important to the board and is part of our goals for the upcoming year. We have a highly qualified team in place, and how would you approach and mentor this team to motivate and empower them to achieve our community and economic outcomes within our budgetary constraints?
I'm very happy that this team is already in place. Could you imagine trying to go out and hire this team? It's just, it might not be possible. It's definitely more time consuming. You definitely wouldn't have the institutional knowledge that you've already created with them. There's lots of different ways, I think, to sort of say it, but you use the term mentoring. I would use the term coaching. I would rather fall back to lead by example. If I can be good at what I do, it's an example for them to be good at what they do. Specifically, I've been going through a process most of my career that required continuing education or education of some sort to get me the ability to do that part of the job. And when you get a license from the state of Massachusetts, continuing education is a requirement, so you don't have to think about it. But when I decided to move from public sector development to private sector development, I wasn't so great on P&Ls, pro formas, the number side of the business. So I spent a couple of semesters, one at Harvard and one at MIT in their real estate graduate schools, to get that experience, to get that information, so that when I was doing it professionally, I had some foundation of knowledge to do that. So there's some component of which, no matter how good any of these staff people are, no matter how proficient or knowledgeable you are about your area of expertise, you got to keep educating yourself. You got to keep up with what's changing in your industry and in that particular field. So constant reminder, where are we? Where are you? What's your professional development like? What's your educational development like? How can I help you? Who can help you? Is there cross collateralization here with other staff members? Terrible example, but it's top of mind. My son decided to go to graduate school while he's working full-time. Where did he go to graduate school? I said, ask your colleagues where they went, you should go, and where the best schools are. I expect to be borrowing a lot of other people's advice, based on their knowledge and experience, to sort of answer those questions. If we can have a cohesive team, all that is possible. I like some kind of regimentation in a daily schedule or a weekly schedule. I like regular meetings. You guys meet on Tuesday nights. Everybody knows. I'd like a staff meeting, same time, same place, every week. I'd like one-on-ones with them once a week as well, because they need to tell me what's going on as much as I need to make sure it fits into the overarching policy direction that we're in. I anticipate going with every one of them to their committees meetings. So there's at least 8 different committees, citizen committees, that fall under the purview of this department. That's at least 8 meetings a month, if not 12 or 16. Each one of these staff people should be at their respective committee meetings. It's pretty easy if you're the administrator, like Brittany, but I would be going as well, which gets me out of the house at night. I'm usually watching on television anyway, so now I have a reason to be there. So I don't know yet is also an answer. You got to meet the folk. You got to talk to them. You got to find out what they're about. You got to find out what their aspirations are in this position. I don't expect anybody to be in their job forever. And if their goal is to get as proficient as this is possible, to do it at another level or at another town or city, then by all means, let's help that person get to where they need to be, get as much out of them as we can while they're here until they're ready to go. I don't think I've ever fired anybody. Not that it's in my purview in this position anyways. A whole set of personnel structure that I'm not familiar with, but I'm sure exists, that wouldn't allow you to do that anyways. So if any of you guys are listening, no one's getting fired. There's no reason for that. But I would have to tap into the personnel systems here to find out exactly what you can and can't do to modify behavior if that's an issue.
Thank you.
Spiro, if you're hired, what would be your priority for 30-day, 60-day, and 90-day actions?
The 30-day one, probably most obvious. You really got to figure out what you're looking at. And before you even said 30 days, I would have said, I need 30 days to find out what's going on here. So kind of meet everybody, find out who everyone is, find out what they do, delve more deeply into each one of their areas of responsibility to understand what they should be doing as well as what they are doing, which a lot of times doesn't match. I think at that point I'd probably come back and ask you or tell you what's going on. I don't know how often department heads come before you, but I assume it's every 90 days. You guys are going to get an update from all of your department heads, so at some point we'll be coming in to sort of tell you where we're at and where we think we want to go. 60 days, you're affecting the change that you discovered needed to be made in the first 30. And by 90, if we're not sort of intact, in place to move forward on the policy directives you've given us, then I got a call for help. I'm going to need somebody to help me get us to that point to make sure that we're all able to go forward. That's just a guess. This is I don't think I've experienced anything this intense before, but I think that's the value of having done 15 other things before you did this. So you kind of know how to deal with stuff when it happens.
Thank you.
Liz.
I, having kind of following that and as my previous question, how would you approach developing action steps towards implementing our new comprehensive plan vision?
I would probably start with one of the main architects. I think you have an invaluable resource in Kathy Williams here. I've worked fairly closely with two planners, town planners before. One in Mashpee and one in Dennis. And they, in many respects, were the heartbeat of the process that you're describing, that without them, you really can't go forward. So, as much as the architect makes themselves available for the next phase, which would be construction, implementation, that person would be key. It was done in very close proximity to the planning committee. And there's some really good resources there as well. You probably saw that with Joanne last week. We need to get into the community to translate what this, I mean, it's kind of an odd way to say it. They told us what should be in the LCP, and now we're going back to tell them what's in the LCP. It's a sort of, thanks for telling us what you wanted, now we got to get you to buy into what we're doing. So it's going to be a lot of public engagement, just ongoing all the time, as much as possible, big groups, small groups, specialized groups, and making ourselves available. by ourselves, I mean the whole team, the whole staff in the department, they all got to be proficient in that document, not just their own area of expertise, but probably the whole thing, just to see how it overlaps or connects. And then everybody be out there. I had this notion for a different reason, but I guess it applies here. I don't think this department's ever done an open house. So I noticed and I got this, I guess, this idea from the county. They're doing an open house in September. Does anybody know what the county does? I was on the Assembly of Delegates, and I had a tough time answering the questions sometimes. So there's an open house. These are all the departments. These are all the people representing departments. It does two things. It tells the public, whoever crazy enough to show up, what they do. But it also makes the person responsible for that department to make themselves available to the public to answer the question. So what do you do? It makes them better, I'm sure. It makes us all better for having been able to answer that question. So open house if it's appropriate for a department, it's definitely appropriate for an LCP. And if you need to break it down by subject matter or area emphasis, so you can do it as small bites, that's one thing. I mean, it might be easier than just a giant open house for the LCP. I'm not sure any one of us would be up for doing that, but in a more broken down fashion. Spread out over time, spread out over locations, lots of different ways to plug in and engage, but it's that getting the constituency you did this for to buy back into it. So as you're doing it, they're not saying, what are you doing? Well, we agreed this is what we were going to do. That's why it's in a plan.
I am going to forego my last question and allow you just a couple of minutes briefly to have a
Okay.
closing statement.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking your time. Thank you for your interest in the position, and thank you for your ongoing community involvement, really.
Thanks. Thank you for saying that. There's a question I would always ask folks that they would help in getting to where they want to be, whether it's their job or political office or something else. And it was always, why do you want this position? Why do you want this job or whatnot? And you'd think it's obvious, but we're all terrible at answering that question. To the degree that I'm going to ask myself this question now, for me, this is a closing of the circle. That I was in this building 40 years ago, meeting with the town manager about exactly this thing. What should I be doing? Can I be doing it for this organization, for this town? And this is Bob Lawton, by the way. He was very kind enough to say, you should go get some experience first and then come back.
Wow.
Well, I'm back. It's just 40 years later. With a whole mess of experience, some of it relevant, some of it not, but it's all sort of life experience when you look at it. I would love to put that to work for this community. I don't know how it happened. I really like this community. It just creeps up on you. It's frustrating. You're stuck on Route 28. You're seeing derelict buildings. You're seeing businesses that came and went. It's not nostalgia. We're not getting the Compass Lounge back. We're not getting the Mill Hill back, as much as we all loved them when they were here. Although the disco ball is at Maplewood, in case you guys didn't know that, from the Mill Hill. But it is, it's appropriate to sort of kid about that, but at the same time be serious about that. We took these two sort of mainstay institutions of our tourism, businesses, and economy back in the day, and we turned them into a CVS and a memory care facility. I mean, the irony is undisputable. That's where our community is. That's part of our journey. That was our journey to get to where we are today. So if I can spend the next few years making this community better through whatever I can afford it, through my experience and my knowledge, good sense, willingness to listen, to what folks need and want. I think I'd like to do that for the next few years.
Thank you. That was a great closing. Very, very appreciative. And as you know, we're going to interview all 3 candidates tonight. We won't be making a decision tonight, but we will be taking it up at our next meeting.
Thank you, guys. I
No,
appreciate it.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vero.
Thanks,
It was a
Vero.
pleasure. I said to someone in the town hall not too long ago, I just wanted to have the conversation, and I'm glad we did.
Thank you.
Excellent.
You don't have
Thanks,
to
Barry. Thanks, Mark. Very good. We need more security. Okay, next we have Megan Eldridge.
So Tracy, you want us to basically repeat our questions?
Yes. Please.
Gotta be the same. I've written them down and everything.
Yep, I
One of
kept
my-
notes of who asked what. And
Yeah, I made notes too.
So Bob, was this one copy of the,
Yeah, that's just
that can be
one
passed
copy. I was
down?
gonna
Oh, yeah.
pass it down, give you a little glimpse of some of the information that we've been reviewing in the emergency planning area, and it's great to see that, you know, the high pressure continue to force it out, but as you can see, by it's so huge, that storm, that
315 miles.
we're gonna have some of the, you know, the wind is gonna be hitting the Cape, and, you know, that surf's gonna be high, but the folks down in the Carolinas, I think, you know, we'll really see what happens.
20-foot waves.
Yeah,
what
that's-
they're predicting down there. My concern are the rip currents. You know, that's a tough one for the lifeguards. It always is. There's nothing more frightening than being caught in a rip current. It's happened to me. And you can hear it all you want about how you should go parallel to the beach and everything, but when you're in it, it doesn't feel like that.
welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Very much appreciated. So for the public, this is Miss Megan Eldridge. Megan, we obviously in the board have your information that you've provided to the town. So we'll go around and ask some questions, but we'll give you some time to make an opening statement. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into it. And then after, when we're close to the 1 hour mark, we'll wrap it up and allow you to just say a few words before we conclude.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest in our community and applying for the position. We're excited to have you here.
Right. Well, my name is Megan Eldridge. I am currently the Assistant Town Administrator in the town of Harwich. I have lived in the town of Yarmouth since 2001, so I'm familiar with the school systems and the programs that are here, and I've been working with Bob for a few years as well. I started my municipal career back in 1999 as a health inspector for the town of Brewster. I went to college for environmental science and biology, and growing up I thought I would always go into that environmental field, and public health was kind of a backdrop, but I started working for the town of Brewster in their health department, and I learned all about municipal government and all of the aspects that come along with municipal government. It's not just paying taxes and having your water turned on, for sure. I worked there and then moved up to the town of Dennis in the health department there as well. And I did a lot of plan reviews, inspections out in the public, programming for public health programs, mostly on the environmental side with Title V, and also in the restaurant side of the field. And then I worked part-time in Harwich and part-time in Dennis at a period of time after I had my child. My daughter was born in 2007, so around that time I was working part-time in one place and part-time in another. And an opportunity arose in Harwich to work there full-time in their health department. And I worked with Paula Champagne, the health director in Harwich, and became the health director a few years later after she retired. So I've worked in a management type of role since 2019. I oversaw the department as well as seasonal inspectors and had a lot of interaction with the Board of Health, monthly meetings. And then COVID came, and that really kind of changed everyone's perspective, but particularly in public health. And as the health director there, we worked in a situation in an emergency management and emergency operations center where I sat closely with the town administrator at the time, and we worked well together. We were able to develop plans and have our communication focused on the community, the businesses, as well as our staff and residents. And we worked for about 6 months together in that capacity. And when he was promoted to full-time town administrator, he was in need of an assistant, and he asked if I was interested in that position. So from there, I accepted that. We went through the interview process, and I was selected. The select board also supported that decision as well. And from there, I've been in administration. And the assistant town administrator in Harwich oversees the community development departments. They are different departments in Harwich than they are here in Yarmouth. Yarmouth has more of a economic development side, where Harwich is health, building, conservation, zoning, historic. So those departments all meet regularly, and I would oversee those departments and their projects. I'm also in charge of procurement, and that is a pretty hefty job for one person. We have over 70 projects that are open at one time, old projects, new projects. So every department has to go through the procurement process, which I'm primary on. Early on in town administration, I was also HR, human resources. Thankfully, we have separated that duty into a new position. But during that time, I was responsible for recruiting and interviewing, hiring, recommending, and dealing with staff issues. They always come up. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any more
Think of
questions.
Austin Powers.
Oh.
Well, thank you. We will start with Mark.
I too want to thank you for applying for this position and your interest in serving in the town of Yarmouth. I also want to commend you for choosing public administration and public service as your career and your service to the community. And I want to congratulate you as well for surviving COVID as a health department leader. My question to start off is, you've had a chance to sort of do your research on Yarmouth and what's going on here. What do you see as Yarmouth's biggest challenges and opportunities in the area of community development?
I always feel that housing is a challenge across the Cape, particularly in Yarmouth as well, with the diverse residents we have. We have young people, people of an older age, and everyone needs affordable housing. Yarmouth is not quite at our 10% for our SHI list, our subsidized housing list. So I see that as a challenge that the town is facing. And it's an opportunity for the town to face that challenge and find the best ways to create new housing in a way that is acceptable, fits in with the culture of the town. We know what we like, what we don't like, and where to put it. That's one of the biggest challenges that I see, and it's also an opportunity to figure out the best way to do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome, Megan. Thank you for applying today, and like everyone else, we really appreciate your stepping into public service. It's not always the easiest job, but it's certainly rewarding. My question is, tell us about a time that you successfully managed a complex community development project. Tell us about your specific role in the project, challenges faced in the outcome, and what you would have done differently.
Okay. There are a couple of examples I can think of. The one that comes to mind is a playground that the town built behind the elementary school. So this was maybe 4 years ago. We needed an upgrade to the community playground behind the elementary school. And at the time, we had a town engineer who was doing the procurement for that project, and he was overseeing the management of the design and going through the construction process. And he took a job in another town in the beginning stages of that project, and it fell to the assistant town administrator, as many things do. And I took that project on, and we went from developing plans that went out to bid for construction, and there was a lot of community involvement because it involved CPC funds, so we needed to make sure the funds were being used properly and that the community knew what their money was going towards. And also there was a parent group, a parent group that provided money. They had donated their own money in addition to the CPC funds. So there was some public outreach and community forums on what would you like to see your next playground to look like. And we developed a plan, went forward with getting the equipment ordered and installed, and having that end and seeing a playground built and being part of the product of that was very rewarding, being there at the ribbon cutting and seeing a project from start to finish was a very rewarding part of the career.
Thank you.
Joyce.
Well, Megan, Cape Cod has enjoyed for a couple decades international visitors, Western Europe, Canada, and occasionally that gets interrupted by something global, like a pandemic or a recession. But we're in this odd situation now where because of things happening at the national level, a lot of our traditional and international visitors are reluctant to come to Yarmouth. How would you think of strategizing around that to get them back, and how to differentiate Yarmouth from other things that may be bothering them?
That's an interesting question. I would start by figuring out what the problem is. What is it that is creating that apprehension to come to town, and addressing it through community forums or outreach or utilizing our Chamber of Commerce. They're a great resource to bring in to bring in outside visitors. They know how to do that better than I think most do. Our Chamber of Commerce is a great resource. I would start there. I would do more advertising in places that we would attract those types of visitors. I would also see if the business owners have any ideas on how they can gain attraction from outside visitors. Move this over a little bit. My sister actually works in the hospitality industry and is facing that at this time where the inn is not as full as it could be because of the national angst at the moment. And unfortunately, they are in the situation where they don't know quite how to figure that out. So I would partner with the businesses.
Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome. Thank you.
My name's Liz Argo, just to introduce myself. I guess it's on my plaque, but I'm thinking that you probably have had a chance to, and especially because you live here, get familiar with our local comprehensive plan. Good.
Yeah.
And seeing it and getting a sense of where we're headed and our future. Is there a redirection or a different a different strategy that you might champion at knowing what you've read?
One strategy that I would suggest would be including more of the younger families in developing the plan. I know we're at a final draft stage here, so it's nearly too late to do that. But I would start at the schools and talk with the parents and get the younger crowd involved in it. We would be able to see what perspectives they have, if there's any recreational opportunities to have that we haven't already addressed. I know the plan involves some wonderful projects that we're working on now. But I would start with reaching out to families that are in the school system. They will hopefully be here for decades to come and will be the voice of the future.
Thank you. Megan, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to look at our community development department. As you probably know, it's a great time right now for new leadership with some of the vacancies and alike. And I'm just wondering, looking at the structure specifically, what are the things that you might look at or think about doing differently?
I see that there are several departments under this director position, and I would see if there were opportunities to combine a couple departments where they do similar things. CPC grants and the tourism grants are grant related, so perhaps we can share resources there. But I think that it's a wonderful department where we are able to have staff cover those specific things. But I think maybe we could look at combining some of the specialties and into a singular department where there are vacancies.
Okay. Mark?
Okay. And as has been said, the director's position oversees and manages several offices, divisions, committees, staff, planning, economic development, conservation, the Old Kings Highway, Board of Appeals, community preservation, and we're an entitlement community with HUD, so we manage our own CDBG program. So talk a little bit about your background, your experience in terms of managing these kinds of departments and staff.
Sure. Currently, I am filling in as a department head in the building department because we don't have one at the moment. But they oversee zoning and historic in Harwich. So I have been the primary contact for questions that the staff may have for how do we file this application, what do we do about this situation. Not so much being the subject matter expert, but being the one to find the answers for those types of questions. Also, planning and conservation are under my purview at the moment. That is the same situation where I'm a kind of a conduit between those committees, those staff members, and administration and the select board. So I see this position in a similar light, where it is a way to bring information from a variety of places to the town administrator and the select board for bigger decisions, bigger opportunities, bigger goals that can be brought back down to those departments. We have a CPC, Community Preservation Committee, that isn't under any particular department. It is completely separate in Harwich. However, the grants that they administer do come through our office administration. So we develop the grant agreements and manage the contract, if you will, manage the agreement and make sure payments are made where they need to be made. And if there were progress or milestones that needed to be set and hit before payment is made, we do that as well. We have a program for early childhood education that is managed through our Youth and Family Services department that also comes through administration as far as payment goes and processing that sort of thing, managing that budget. All budgets go through administration, and that's part of what we do every fall, and I've been part of that, helping each of the departments develop their budgets from start to finish, whether it's enhancements of services or keeping it level service or even level funded, and assisting departments that do receive grants to make sure that they're managing those grants properly. And it's about connecting the right people, to the right resources. So I wouldn't consider myself an expert in any of those departments, but I am able to coordinate and connect people who need to get the answers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Megan, staff retention is very important to the board, and as part of our goals for the coming year. We have a highly qualified team in place, and how would you approach and mentor the team to motivate and empower them to achieve our community and economic outcomes within our budgetary constraints?
Mm-hmm. I am a big advocate of teams and promoting your team in the public and building them up and making sure that they are aware of how much they are valued in their role. Coming into a new team can always be challenging, not knowing personalities, not knowing people, but it is something that I look forward to, getting to know people and their strengths and their weaknesses. I think it's very important to motivate a person in a way that they like to be motivated. Knowing their management style more than my management style can sometimes gain better outcomes. So getting into a new team, I think regular meetings are very important. I think being communicative and having an open door is, at least in the beginning, the most important way and easiest way to get to know your team. What's the other part of that question?
Well, talking about the budgetary constraints,
Yes.
too.
That's always a constraint. Knowing that we have a set amount of money, training is a big part of development, of professional development, and being able to send people to training is part of a budget constraint, and that can really put a damper on your development of your team. The team, I think, will respond best if they have the opportunity to meet with me one-on-one or meet with me as a group. Setting goals is the best way for me to feel motivated. So that is how I would approach a new team, would be to have clear goals, clear objectives, and hitting milestones and celebrating those milestones as we go. I'm a big believer in never putting someone's bad work in public, and always putting their best foot forward, promoting a person's successes. And I think having a team that feels valued and feels supported will give you the best outcomes that you could ask for.
Thank you.
Megan, assuming you're hired and your desk is as clear as that table, what would be your 30-day, your 60-day, your 90-day goals, and how would you prioritize those?
My initial goals would be to get to know the team, find out what they need from me immediately. I wouldn't want them to feel that they are anything less than the most important part of the job, the team that you oversee. I would get to know the projects that they are facing and that I would be responsible for pushing forward. I would want to know what my goals and objectives were from above. So I would meet with the town administrator regularly and get my marching orders, as you would say, from the local comprehensive plan or the select board in general, as to see out what your visions are for the town. If I'm hired, I would be an employee of the town. It wouldn't be just my vision. It would be the vision of the select board and the public. So 30 days in, it would be primarily research on the personalities, the open projects that need immediate attention. And then out from that, it would be in the middle of the budget season. So I would be examining the budget and figuring out if there are ways to save or different ways to utilize funds. And I would work with the team to see what their outward goals are so we can start working on a plan, a timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Liz?
So knowing to some degree our local comprehensive plan, how would you approach developing action steps towards implementing the new comprehensive plan vision?
Same way I would approach pretty much any project with milestones and making sure you have the people that are going to reach those milestones aware of the timelines, the timeframes, and regular check-ins. You have to know what you're getting, what you're going towards in order to get there. So regular check-ins with the team, but having a matrix of this, we need to do X, Y, Z before we can get to this final product. There are a lot of projects that are short-term, and in planning, there are many projects that are long-term, that are years in the making. So it's important to pace yourself and to get everyone involved who needs to be involved, but also not be kind of that death by committee situation where you have too many opinions and you're not able to make a decision. So I'm very much aware of how committees can help and how they can hinder, and that is how I would approach committees with how do you see your role in this and how can I help, and also see what the select board feels in those situations too, to be able to follow through with the vision of the charter and the vision of the select board.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a half hour left, but those are the questions that we got to with the first applicant. So I'm not sure whether or not we should continue, how the board feels about continuing asking questions.
It's odd, because if we ask another question, that seems unfair to number one. But if someone is extremely concise answering questions, it's unfair to not give her the full hour.
Right. How do you feel, Mark?
I understand what you're saying. From my point of view, we have an hour. I think we gave the other candidates an hour.
Yes, okay.
Right? So we should give this candidate an hour, and I'm happy to continue asking questions if that's okay.
I just want to make sure that's the.
No, I appreciate you asking the full board for our.
I've always been interested in what your next question was going to be, Tracy, so go ahead.
Well, okay, so in a perfect world, I know you talk a lot about, the board and taking your direction, but, we're fortunate that you live here in our town and you drive Route 28. And so Route 28 obviously has been a work in progress for us. Economic development has been a big goal of ours in redeveloping underutilized properties and so forth. I'm just curious, in the role as an economic director, development director in our town, what are your specific things that you've seen that you think that you would be able to help us achieve in terms of progress in that regard?
I have experience with sewer work and how it impacts the local businesses. Harwich has 2 sewer projects that one's finished, one's in the middle of the project. One thing that everyone along those stretches of road that are impacted, they always feel that they're losing customers, they're losing foot traffic, they're losing the people that are driving by. I think one thing that is extremely important is making sure the business owners have a time frame and that time frame is adhered to. Contractors have to be held accountable for their schedule too, and know that we have businesses that are impacted and our livelihoods are impacted as well. We could do more signage, more detours, making businesses more visible in different ways, making sure that people who need to get to someplace know how to get there even if there's a detour, shortening those detours in a way that you're not sent all around town just to get to the road next door. I found that frustrating at some points where, you're really just going 100 yards down the road, but you're detoured through neighborhoods. It happens, and sometimes it's unavoidable. But to keep those times as small as possible are the best ways to avoid having the economy impacted by sewer work or any other work that utilities cause to shut down areas of town. And having social media involved has been a great thing with detours, letting people know ahead of time that they have to go around and plan their day around it. But as far as the economic impact, minimizing time is paramount to anything. And if we need to bring in more contractors or have expanded hours of work so they can finish their work sooner, that's something that you could explore. It seems to me that it's a problem that needs to be fixed, and I enjoy fixing problems. It's something that I strive to do in every job, is to find something that I could make better. And this is obviously has been a problem or an issue for months, and we'll get through it, and it will be a better environment for it. But having alternate entrances to businesses and making sure that tourists who don't know the area can get around and find what they're looking for. But it's those businesses that are more stop in because you're driving by rather than the business that you have an appointment for that are being impacted. So looking at who's being impacted and figuring out how you can shorten that period of time of disruption is a way that I would approach that.
Mark?
Thank you. Talk to us a little bit about why you are interested in this position and working in Yarmouth.
I am interested in this position because it will give me an opportunity to see more projects and more growth in my town. The job that I currently hold has a lot of hats and a lot of responsibilities in a lot of areas that I end up giving guidance to and never being able to be at that finish line. I have to hand off projects to community development or DPW or the harbor master and things like that, where we work together to develop a plan. We develop a project, and then they run with it. And I sort of miss out on running with it, and I do like that. And I feel I would be more fulfilled in my career if I'm able to utilize my problem-solving skills and my outlook on how the community should be developed and how we can. Oh, does this stop working? I would be more fulfilled if I had an opportunity to work in a smaller niche rather than 26 different departments that are all coming to me at once. I think that I would feel more fulfilled in my career if I did that.
Thank you.
Dorcas.
Our candidate in this position is going to have an interesting challenge because we have just seen the resignation of our entire Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund Committee or Economic Development, and
Just let me see, there are 2 men named Peter left. They're the survivors.
there are
But they're new
surviving,
members.
they're new members, okay, but in essence, you're going to be starting from square one. And I'd be interested in how, on that particular project, you would work.
First off, I would work on recruiting new members to make sure that committee is fully complemented. And I would do that through advertisement at this level, at making sure that the board is able to put that notice out, but also social media and businesses, and seeing if we can recruit help. So we have a fuller board. I would put myself into that committee setting where I would help them with any open projects, and oversee that committee as much as they need. But having a committee without a quorum is a difficult situation. It sort of puts things at a standstill on a committee level. But overall, as the director of community development, I would make sure programming doesn't stop, and any outreach that needs to be done would still continue.
Thank you.
If there were a community development tooth fairy, and you had the chance to drop on some part of 28 a business that would employ 25 full-time people, what would be your choice of the type of business and the type of skills that would be needed for employees?
The restaurant industry never seems to fail along Route 28. On Cape Cod in general, there's definitely turnover from one business to another, but in the summer, there's always a hard challenge to get into a restaurant. So I would see the hospitality industry as a good option to plop down somewhere on Route 28, obviously depending on where that section is. And those employees, that would range from management staff, owner staff, as well as restaurant workers, the chefs to the wait staff. And it would also employ those Uber Eats and other people that utilize that service. I see a restaurant as a good opportunity for not only our economy, but also as a opportunity for visitors and staffing alike.
Thank you.
Liz?
This is a reach, planning would be under your careful supervision. And I've understood that there's the potential for developers to get a blanket money, which is go, from the state, and then they can move away from our architectural standards. And so how would you approach a developer who wants to develop something that is not in accordance with our architectural standards?
I would first research the regulation to see if that is in fact the way it is. I would look at our regulations to see what parts, regulations or bylaws, to see what parts that they are not complying with. Bringing the developer into a setting like a community development meeting with the planner and perhaps someone from zoning to go through the plans and discuss what the differences are between what they're proposing and what our desire is. And not pushing, but suggesting changes to plans to make them more acceptable to the setting that they're going into, letting them know why our regulations and bylaws are the way they are, and giving them an opportunity to make the changes.
Megan, we've had some couple of changes in our Chamber of Commerce in my years being involved in town, and different relationships, so to speak, between the town and the chamber. How do you envision that as a community and economic development director? What do you see the roles as, and how would you envision that?
I see them as very complementary to each other. The Chamber of Commerce can be a very supportive business partner. They have the pulse of the business owners and of tourism in general. That's really their primary focus, is to create tourism opportunities and economic development for the towns. I see it as a partnership, and we in Harwich, the Chamber of Commerce and our Cultural Affairs Director partnered maybe 3 years ago to create a cultural district, and that was a good showing of how the Cultural Affairs and the Chamber of Commerce can work together. Even though it's not a town department and we don't have operational control over the Chamber of Commerce, I would think that they would also see us as a partner in shepherding new businesses through the permitting process, and assisting in making those new businesses feel welcome, and giving them the ins and outs of permitting. So I think it's a partnership. I think going forward, being able to have regular meetings and seeing what's happening in town, who's looking to come in, why are people maybe not being successful, and how can we change that? How can we make a failing business into a success? How can the town help with that? Are there parts of our regulations that are impeding businesses? Is there something that we should look at? That's how I would envision that.
Thank you. I noticed on your resume that in Harwich, while you were the health director, you were also very involved in the rollout and in helping implement the comprehensive wastewater management plan. Could you clarify a little bit what your role was specifically and what you did?
At the time, the comprehensive wastewater management plan had been developed, and we were entering into our first construction phase. So the town had never experienced sewer before. So my role in that was to be part of the wastewater implementation committee. And I, myself, along with our wastewater superintendent and 3 volunteers from the public, were able to produce community forums that had public information to kind of demystify what will happen to your project, your property when the sewer comes along. You see people on both sides. I can't wait for my sewer to come, or please don't put sewer down my road. So my role in rolling that out was in the implementation committee with public and community forums and education of what does this mean to you? How is this going to affect your tax bill? What do you do when it's your turn to hook up? And then on the regulatory side, I was in the health department at the time, and we had to figure out, well, what happens when a homeowner has a brand new septic system? Do we give a waiver? Do we give some sort of relief? Is there going to be a betterment process? And working with the Board of Health at the time, we were able to develop a set of guidelines of, if your septic system is less than 10 years old, we will give you a delay of so many years. So it was both the community information side as well as the regulatory side of how is this logistically going to work? How are we logistically going to start billing for sewer? How are we going to permit sewers? How are we going to work with a department that doesn't quite exist yet? We didn't have a wastewater department at the time. So that was a big project, and I feel like it was a success for that initial phase of getting about 600 homes sewered. We were constantly having quarterly meetings with neighborhood associations to make sure they understood what was happening. We met with engineers and went through any new regulations that were coming forward. We just wanted to make sure everyone was not afraid of what was happening and the reasons why. There was a lot of misinformation of why are we doing this. So making sure that the right information is out there was a big part of that rollout.
Thank you.
I defer to, I think for the time, we've got 10 minutes.
Joyce?
Oh, yes, I'd like to ask you about your staff. How would you have the lowliest employee under your staff report? Would it always be up through channels? Would you want action plans from them, perhaps the way you would from your professional staff? The reason I ask this is we have an odd situation where many of our staff members are very overqualified for their positions. And I'm just trying to think how staff development and staff encouragement might happen.
I would always look for that chain of command first. I wouldn't want to overstep a supervisor of someone else, even if they are under my control. I wouldn't want to kind of cut out that middleman unless there was a reason for it. Sometimes there's personality conflicts and the person under a supervisor isn't comfortable talking to that person. So of course, that's a unique situation where I would absolutely speak with them and figure out what was going on. But I do like that chain of command where I would be overseeing and those would be overseeing. I think it's a good way to really know your staff if you have specifics, a limited number rather than a really big number. And same thing for that supervisor of that, you had said the lower level. they should have the opportunity to figure out what those growth opportunities are. If you're constantly going around, then that middle manager doesn't have the opportunity to grow themselves.
So you'd have the supervisors have the responsibility and the thinking to do professional development opportunities for their staff to encourage them.
Initially, yes. And obviously I would monitor the situation. And if things weren't working or if I could see a better way to do it, I would explore that.
Thank you.
Liz?
I'm really satisfied. I think I'm very pleased with what questions we've asked, and I feel like I've got my information, so I think rather than trying to squeeze in another question,
Okay.
for my money, unless Mark, you have something or Tracy?
I agree. I think this has been a very useful time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I'm going to give
Very
you
much.
a few minutes to tell us whatever you haven't had the opportunity to tell us about yourself thus
Okay.
far. And again, I just want to thank you so much for your interest here and applying and going through this process. I know it's not always an easy process to go through publicly, but
No.
it is very much appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to explain myself, my resume, my background and experience. I think that my multidisciplinary experience is a unique attribute to me. I not only have the regulatory background of being able to speak the zoning language that is elusive to so many, but also having that financial background of being in administration puts me at a different level. I have one accomplishment that I would like to talk about that I didn't get an opportunity to was our town Harwich has a Director of Cultural Affairs, which is a position that I don't believe exists anywhere else on the Cape. And that position was created and developed during my time in administration. And I think that role has developed into something amazing that has brought a lot of the community together, the staff together, but also businesses together. And having the opportunity to develop that role from scratch was very rewarding. That position had not existed, and going through hiring, finding the right person, and then together deciding what do you want to be when you grow up, kind of thing, and being able to encourage and develop that staff member into what the programs are showing today was just something I wanted to share. It's exciting to start with a project and see it end like that.
That's a wonderful story. Can you tell a little bit about what that position does?
Sure. That position oversees our Cultural Affairs Municipal Building. It's the old middle school, and it has 2 floors of classrooms that are currently used for artist studios. We rent them out by the year, but they pay by the month. It's not a very, very robust financial tool. However, it keeps the lights on. They fill all the classrooms, and since that role has started, she's utilized every inch of that building. She uses the courtyard for a pick your own flowers vendor and Cranberry Festival music fest in the center there in the courtyard. She's developed a farmer's market on the front lawn. All of these things that for me it was, she had these ideas and we talked about them together, and we said, well, let me run it up the flagpole, and it worked, and it's been quite a success over there. It's great.
What's the number of that building?
204, yes, 204 Sisson. It's they have open studios every week and a farmer's market every week if you ever
Formed in
want to
the
go
theater
through.
there.
That's one of the procurement projects we've had in the last few years. The auditorium was in shambles. It hadn't been upgraded in decades, so it needed everything from the curtains, the lights, the seats, sound. So going through that procurement and letting the director kind of run with her vision was great.
How was that funded?
We have a revolving fund for the 204 building for the artists pay their monthly fees, and any revenues generated from programming goes into the revolving fund. The position itself is funded through the operating budget. Procurements that were quite large, we had a capital fund. We funded them as a capital project, and at one time we paid them through free cash. So it does cost money to put buildings into a better condition, but it's worth it in the end.
Excellent. Is there anything else?
No, I think I've answered your questions. You've answered
have.
mine. I think.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Appreciate it.
Boy, that last thing sounded great.
Oh, the next minute I'm hot.
You guys want to take a minute or two, or are you?
We just take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
That'd be great.
In recess for a couple of minutes.
Charlie horse, I'm getting in this leg.
My hand's cramped from all the writing.
I have 5 people arriving to my house on Thursday.
Oh, fun. Summertime.
And a
okay.
dog.
Another dog.
I'd rather the dog. I'd rather 5 dogs.
No, this is,
It's true.
Why does that not surprise me?
I love dogs.
I have a sister, 2 nephews, a niece, and nephew's friend, all descending upon us, which I'm really looking forward to.
Will they self-entertain?
Oh, they do.
Good.
Fortunately, they're at that age. They don't need, in fact,
That's good.
one of them, believe it or not, is a 35-year-old nephew who's bringing his friends, so, and their dog.
Sounds good.
The only thing is that it's an overlap. Most of it's gonna be my sister and her kids, and Chris is only down for a while, but for 2 nights, my sister and I are sharing a bed. We haven't done that since
Oh
we
my
were like
God.
20.
I can't, if I heard I was sharing my bed with my sister, I'd be like, what? All right, here, have a lot of wine.
No hair pulling.
Well, fortunately, I'm one of these people that sleeps like a stone. Put me in the bed and I don't move.
Oh, good
So,
for you.
She doesn't mind. So let me just tell you
So,
this before.
why don't we, well, unless this is part of the process, describe what will happen on the 26th? I mean, how will we be now processing this? Anybody?
Can we talk about
Well,
that?
I was going to say we're in recess. We shouldn't be having a discussion of
No, we
quorum.
shouldn't, yeah,
Very good. But will we tonight?
No.
no.
Okay. So we come to the 26th, and that will be, we'll learn what we're doing next.
Discussion and vote, yeah.
Okay. So we don't grade or, we talked about satisfactory, very satisfactory. Most-
Yeah, I wouldn't issue any
Advantageous.
grades. That's not what you want to do. It's not-
Preference, I would say.
So just
My
your,
1, my 2, my
your
3.
preference without any discussion.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically.
Well, you can discuss. It's fine to discuss, but you know what I mean, remember that,
Positive discussion.
yeah, exactly. I love that concept that we talked about at your last meeting of there are highly advantageous and advantageous.
All right,
Those
we
are your
ready to go?
categories to
Yep.
pick.
Okay. I'll go tell Sarah. We're ready. Come out of recess.
gave my brother a call. They had a 16-year-old and that died in Marblehead last night in a car accident.
Oh, no.
No, I'm sorry, a 13-year-old that died in the car accident was driven by a 16-year-old who was on OUI charges.
Oh, no.
It happened literally around the corner from my brother's house. So I'm like, you don't know these people. Yeah. It turned out they were two kids. All he knows is they were from out of town. But a 13-year-old died,
That's
and
too
the
bad.
16-year-old, I think, is hospitalized. And it's already up on charges of OUI.
Was drinking
At
involved?
2 o'clock in the morning. What is a 13-year-old doing out at 2 o'clock?
Well,
8-year-old doing it.
Not
it certainly was before I was at that age in the summer.
Yeah. We had a curfew in my
It
family.
was part of that theater, so it was anything goes.
The curfew. A sad thing. They're saying they had, last night they had a 13-year-old that died in Marblehead from a car accident, and the driver was a 16-year-old, and it's up on, that person's up on OUI charges. At 2 o'clock in the morning. It was right around the corner from my brother's house. Immediately calling Pete going, do you know these people? I said they were from out of town. Sad.
Each of these is so different.
Yeah. This one's very different.
Well, I'm in my last week of summer camp, so I pretty much say that this is the end of the summer for us. And on my impromptu survey, I've only seen 3 Canada license plates all summer.
Wow. Yeah.
And 1 from Ontario, 1 from Nova Scotia, and 1 from Quebec. And my route for my buses, I go all the way down to the to the Sagamore Bridge, over to the Bourne Bridge and back and through Fountain. So I do a big chunk of the Cape, of the Upper Cape anyway, to the Mid Cape. And I can remember when we had Quebec plates like Connecticut plates. I mean, there were just so many of them.
using Canadian money by this time of year,
There's no shortage of cars, it seems.
but not
Not
Canadian.
Every bit as
Canadian.
crowded.
They're all, and what I'm seeing more than anything else is the Massachusetts plates and New England plates. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
New York, Connecticut,
Jersey.
Rhode Island, Maine, Vermont, but not really that much beyond. I mean, I can remember in past summers that we saw an awful lot of Ohio, for instance. Not seeing the Ohio plates this summer.
Well, I know you've made the rounds, and I can't tell you how delighted Juan was to see you on
In
the
my
route to
duty?
Camp Linden.
I transported Vaughn one day
Oh, wow.
as the bus driver.
He
Yes.
knows you, from the parade and everything, and so it was like Old Home Week, but
Good evening, Ellen.
Hi.
Everybody,
Hi.
You're well. Thank you
Thanks.
for coming.
thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So for the public at home, this is Ellen Carlson. So we just want to start by giving our appreciation for your interest in our community and for your willingness to go through this application process. And we're thankful that you're here. We're going to start with allowing you some time to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll ask some questions, and then we'll allow you to take a few moments at the end to tell us anything else that you feel that we need to know.
Great, thank you. I'll try to speak into the mic. Let me know if for some reason I'm fading or
Look closer to you.
wafting away. So my name's Ellen Carlson. I'm a resident of Sandwich. I've been here on Cape Cod for about 30 years. I come to you from, as a recent retiree from the National Park Service. I was with the National Park Service for 34 years and worked both as a planner for a couple of decades and then moved into legislative and congressional affairs. And so in those capacities, I had a lot of opportunities to work with communities. So, this is the park side of the world and there's the community side of the world. And so I often worked on the park side of the world, or I was always exclusively on the park side of the world, but we always took into consideration our host communities and what their needs and requirements were, what their interests were. We always had robust public processes. And it always provoked in me a real interest in knowing what goes on the other side. What's on the other side of the park boundary? What are those interests and how do they manifest themselves? And what would it be like to work from that perspective? To sort of look at the different economic development needs, the housing needs, the human services needs, all of the things that go into a healthy and robust community that were expressed as interest to us as we were performing our functions in planning for our park units, because we had very much a symbiotic relationship with our host communities. What we offered in terms of services mirrored what they offered in some respects. But it also was a terrific proving ground for learning a lot of different skills, tailoring public engagement, working across multiple disciplines, working with different contracting outfits to meet the needs of the park. And a lot of times, again, that's where we'd have a nexus with the community, doing things like transportation planning to address an issue that arises in a need, looking at community character and what that pertains to within a park context. So there's a lot of good nexus opportunities between my work in the national parks and with our host communities. So I look forward to an opportunity to get to know a place like Yarmouth, to really dig in, to take advantage of all of the good planning that you all have done up to this point. I mean, there's just so much. As I continued to dig in and dig in and dig in, I kept seeing so much good engagement, so much good planning, and so many opportunities to advance different facets of what you all are trying to accomplish here. So I find that very exciting, and I'm looking forward to talking more with you about it.
Thank you, Ellen. We'll start with Mark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Ellen, for taking an interest in our community and applying for this position. We're delighted to have you here. Full disclosure, I worked for 2 congressmen over the years that were fans of the National Park Service and dedicated to the mission and the work of the National Park Service. One wrote the law creating the Boston Harbor Islands National Park, and both congressmen that I worked for were huge fans of the Adams National Historic Park. And that site is just an incredible asset to not only our country, but also to the region. And this whole concept that I talk about a lot of heritage tourism, what it means. The Park Service has been an incredible partner. So I've enjoyed all of my work on behalf of these 2 congressmen, working for the Park Service, working with the Park Service, and on behalf of the Park Service. So thanks for all your hard work with this organization. My question regarding for you today is, in looking over this position and giving some thought to being our next community development director, what do you see as our community's biggest challenges and opportunities with respect to community development?
Well, it strikes me, and it seems like you certainly are on the road to addressing this, is building out your infrastructure to support some of the coastal resiliency issues, dealing with wastewater treatment and figuring out how to deal with septic systems and moving more in the direction of managing for wastewater. Really seems like a huge opportunity on a bunch of different levels in terms of creating the opportunity for potentially more growth, but then also preserving your natural resources and your coastal resources, and protecting your water supply. So there's a huge benefit there. I think also a lot of the work that's gone into quality of life, the work that's going on along Route 28 to try and sort out how to make that a more hospitable corridor for the local economy, for the businesses, and for the community itself so that it's more walkable. There are more recreational opportunities. I noticed a couple of big resource restoration projects that were going on that were going to have a recreational component to them. Those look fantastic. So I think there's a huge body of work that already sets you on a really positive trajectory for those kinds of things, and that it's now the devil's in the details in terms of how to ground it and get it moving so that it's implemented on the ground, and can be something that is real world tangible benefit to the community once it's built out.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. My question is, tell us about a time that you successfully managed a complex community development project. Please tell us about your specific role in the project, challenges faced and the outcome, and what would you do differently?
Well, I think I've done a couple of plans. I think the one that comes to mind in this context is New Bedford Whaling National Historical Park. That was the first plan that I ever had the title of job captain on, and it was from soup to nuts, assembling the team, figuring out what the needs were. We had transportation issues. We had to figure out how we were going to get people across Route 18, which is a big route that separates the waterfront from the historic downtown in New Bedford. We had to sort out how we were going to engage with the Portuguese community, where you were dealing with a lot of people who were not English speakers, and also potentially weren't used to being engaged. And so how do you engage that community? I have to say I'm not 100% sure we were successful, but we tried. The other communities that we tried to engage were the young people in the community, to, help them understand that there was a national park that had emerged. A lot of the work that we did was in partnership with the city of New Bedford. New Bedford's an unusual park in the national park system in that we own one block in a 13-block area. And so for us to protect all of the interests that need to be protected in that 13-block area, we had to rely on a relationship with the city and the Historical Commission and bring them into this planning process so that they had buy-in and there was consensus around what we were going to accomplish, and there was a commitment to accomplishing it. And I think that in its 25-year history, New Bedford has come a long way. The plan was adopted and implemented, and actually they're due for a new plan now because they've basically, that's all borne out. They've done everything in that planning process. In terms of what I would have done differently with that process is I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more engagement with the various communities. That seemed more meaningful during the time. Over the years, the park has built these relationships with these communities, but at the outset, when we were doing this planning process, they weren't marginalized, they were engaged, but the depth to which they were engaged could have been a lot better. And I would have liked to have seen more of that. So we were working with the Wampanoag community, the Portuguese community, the Azorean community, and I think that we just dipped our toes in. We didn't go deep enough.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Welcome, Ellen. We are used to being blessed with lots of Cape tourists who come from Canada, from Western Europe, and we were just saying at the break how few license plates we've seen from Canada. We've obviously gotten through pandemics and recessions, and those cause dips in the visitors. But I'm kind of stumped on what we have going right now. Can you strategize a way to differentiate Yarmouth and the Cape from the things that many international potential visitors find uncomfortable about the national scene right now?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I think that, tourism waxes and wanes. And so oftentimes we'll have these dips, and we'll have, we have these political circumstances that we're coping with right now that have resulted in us having a dip. but, you know, we have other audiences too. So there are times when perhaps, and this is, you know, this is just an off the cuff, you know, without doing a deep dive analysis, but to sort of think about what other audiences we can cultivate. So if we've lost our international audience for a short time, it's not to say that we're not going to continue to try and cultivate that audience and continue to try to attract them. But what other audiences are there out there that we could potentially grow and take advantage of? And so maybe it's our, you know, more repeat visitation, more local visitation, and we're offering the kinds of activities and programming, you know, like expanding a farmer's market or doing other kinds of things that would be a local draw that would bring repeat visitors into town. Again, you know, never losing sight of the fact that you want to continue this relationship with the international outreach and the international tourism interests, but to sort of take advantage of the multiple audiences that really come to Yarmouth and come to Cape Cod. I don't know if that helps. Just again, off the cuff.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Liz Argo. I was born in Orleans, but now I live in Yarmouth, and I've been on the select board for approximately 10 months. So, hopefully you've had a chance to look over our draft local comprehensive plan, and its, you know, intention is to really drive a lot of the economic development as we go forward. Mm-hmm. And just without making it a negatory, but is there any redirection, or is there something maybe that was missed that it's not too late you think we should consider for our local comprehensive plan?
I mean, I've taken a look at it. I've definitely sort of given it a sweep from cover to cover. I like it. I think that there's a lot of really good, you know, directions in the plan. Without knowing much more about Yarmouth, like if you asked me in 6 months, I think I could give you a better answer. But generally, I really thought that it was pinned to all of the ideas that were coming out of the vision workshop. The vision plan was very good and really interesting to look at. And I think that that the matrix that was developed that sort of identified all the responsibilities and the potential funding sources was a really good outline to sort of begin advancing the program that's defined by the plan. It seems to me that as you implement, you have opportunities to massage and think through how you would, you know, again, it always is the devil's in the details. So you've come up with this general notion of the direction you want to take, but then as you move forward with implementation, there may be these opportunities to tweak the direction just a bit as you sort out where the, you know, the rubber meets the road. I did notice one thing that I don't know if anyone else mentioned it, but I was reading it on the ferry yesterday, and I was looking at the chart, the implementation chart, and I was spending my time looking up all of the acronyms for the town offices that were responsible. So I think an acronym table for that one would be helpful. And I come from the land of acronyms, so.
Sure do.
So we were always sensitive to that, but I was thinking to myself as I was working my way through it that probably there are people in town who need help with some of those acronyms too.
Good addition. Very good. Thank you.
All right, great. I'm not sure you've had the opportunity to look at the structure of our community development department right now. There's some vacancies. There's a lot of departments that are underneath it, and I'm wondering if you have any ideas or thoughts of what you might change in terms of structure.
For the department, you know, I would want to sit with that question a little bit. You know, again, I wouldn't want to mess with it too much until I have a better familiarity about how the town is really working. It seems that there's a lot of responsibility under the community development program, and there may be some opportunities to recalibrate who does what, which is almost always the case, but I wouldn't want to hasten a a guess as to how to restructure until I've really had a chance to dive into it and understand everyone's roles and responsibilities.
Enough? Okay, Mark?
Thank you. As you know, this community development director position oversees a lot of programs, offices, a lot of work. Planning, economic development, conservation, Old Kings Highway, Historic District, the Board of Appeals, Community Preservation Act, and we have our own CDBG entitlement program here in Yarmouth. So talk to us a little bit about your background, your experience that demonstrates a capability to sort of manage these programs and the staff.
It's, I would say it's on two different levels. So I've done a lot of project management, which has involved, assembling teams, dealing with large landscapes. When I did my studies, I was dealing with looking at the 524-mile Erie Canalway and sort of sorting out, well, how do you assemble a team for that? What consultants do you need? Who are you engaging in terms of partners to have those conversations? How are you examining this sort of behemoth of a resource? Likewise, Niagara Falls was similar in that we had to look. We were working with Parks Canada. And so we had to really, go through the process of assembling the team, figuring out what the scope of work was going to look like, what supporting consultation we were going to need, what those scopes looked like, what that product, how that product was going to evolve, and then go through the various review processes that started, with the local communities and moved up through our regional offices and our Washington office. So they were complex processes that I had to navigate and ensure were brought to fruition and sort of checked all the boxes. In my professional capacity was in my acting positions. So basically, by and large, outside of managing teams and, my planning role and my legislative affair role was sort of a technical specialist. So I didn't have staff underneath me, except in those management roles in terms of managing the teams and the project contractors. When I took the details at New Bedford and at Adams, and when I was chief of external affairs, I had small teams that I was running. And external affairs is probably the most comparable to this in that we had disparate programs. They were all sort of parallel track programs that were all under external affairs. So I had partnerships, I had public affairs. We had the government information specialist. That's the person who ran FOIA for us. So that's the Federal Office of Information, Federal blah, 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 information. You know what I'm saying. FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act. Thank you, brain. And then finally, legislative affairs, which I kept that hat because we tried to detail someone and we couldn't because things blew up in this current environment. But we made sure that we had regular communication, that everyone knew that I was accessible to them, that I was there to support them, that I knew what they were doing, I knew what their obligations were, at a given point. I knew where they were having trouble, and I would be working with them to troubleshoot things. So I think that that's, given the complexity and also sort of these parallel tracks, which aren't really are only superficially parallel tracks. They really do work in concert with one another. So the coordination across these, potential trunks is really going to be an important facet of what we do. And it's something that I feel that between my project work and my work is a superintendent and the chief of external affairs sort of lends itself to.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Ellen, staff retention is very important to the board, and as part of our goals for the coming year. We have a highly qualified team in place. How would you approach and mentor this team to motivate and empower them to achieve our community and economic outcomes within our budgetary constraints.
Yeah. I really enjoy working with people as a team. So I think of myself as a team leader as opposed to the supervisor. And what I like to do is make sure that I'm in regular communication with the team, that I would like to have like a weekly meeting so that we all are touching base, what's going on, how are things going, to do that as a group so that everyone has awareness of what they're all doing, so that they understand that they're all cohesively part of this larger team, but then also to have regular touch points with people to make sure to check in. It's like, how are you doing? Is this project going okay? Do you need help with something? Those kinds of things, that kind of support, I think, is really, really important. Another thing that I think is really important is professional development. And it's tough to do professional development on a shoestring. So looking for those opportunities where, maybe there's a shadow opportunity, to work with somebody else on something, or to collaborate on a project that would give you a window into some other facet of the work that the community town is accomplishing. Or to take advantage of video conferences and other things like that enable them to connect with other staff, that are functioning in other capacities in other places in the country, because we're not, the problems that we face here are sometimes similar to what's happening on Long Island or similar to what's happening in, the West Coast. Those opportunities to learn from others is also a great professional development opportunity. I think that things should be fun too. Every once in a while, it's nice to have coffee and donuts and just, chat and have a moment where you're just breathing and not overwhelmed by everything that's going on. Taking a minute to just breathe and commune with one another is another really important way to sort of build the team and make sure that people have a comfort level with each other and have a comfort level with me in terms of coming to me if there's a problem, because if I don't know what's happening, I can't help. So that's kind of where I come from on that.
Thank you.
Ellen, this has got to be a little abstract because I know you're not currently plugged into all sorts of complications and structures in Yarmouth. But if you were to take a position like this, what would be your 30-day, 60-day, 90-day goals, and how would you set the priorities?
So first, I'd want to take the first 30 days knowing that there'll be things that pop up that have to be, fires that just have to be put out so that you can't avoid that. But to take the first 30 days to really just get the lay of the land, meet the staff, meet with the boards, spend time talking with Bob about what where he's coming from as the town administrator, hearing from you all, and again, the other boards about what the town priorities are, and wrapping my head around some of these documents. I mean, there's so much what I gleaned from just researching what we know about Yarmouth, what's available just online. There are so many documents to dig into and just to get a better sense of. So I would even say 30 to 60 days is that kind of thing. At that point, once we're there and, I'm getting to know the lay of the land, my priorities are your priorities. So I'll be looking to you all and to the various boards and to Robert to sort of say, okay, these are the things that we really want to emphasize, and these are the things that we really want to move forward. And if you could make, A, B, and C happen, that would be awesome. And then I would get to work on A, B, and C. And, what I like and what I kind of am beginning to understand about the community is that, and looking at the way the implementation plan is lined out, there's a lot of cross collaboration. So there's a lot of supporting one another as we move these things forward. So whatever my role is as the community development director, I would anticipate, working in that direction, and hopefully within, within that 30 to 60 days window, really gradually really spinning up to speed to be able to do that, to really be able to engage and begin helping to move those things forward.
Thank you.
Okay, so you kind of took the wind out of the sails of my next question
Sorry.
because
That means she's good, you know.
yes, but I was going to ask, knowing the comprehensive plan to some degree, what would be your action steps towards implementing the new comprehensive plan vision? So rather than the 30, 60, 90,
Yeah.
what are the first steps?
It's somewhat similar. It's really just trying to understand. I'll have to get my footing, and I'll have to get to know who does what, who the players are, where the fires are, because the fires are always going to be the things that I'm going to have to dive into, and I may just have to figure it out as I go. That's just you don't always have the benefit of a full slate of knowledge going to some of these things, but the good news is that especially with some of these projects, you have people who've been working on them, and I can immediately jump in to sort of see what I need to do to support those efforts, at the same time as sort of getting a better sense of the lay of land is and what the needs and requirements are going forward that would help me set some goals and figure out how to best support, what the community wants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So kind of alternate to that, not necessarily looking at this from a lens of what the community may want or the board's goals or objectives. Just basically your opinion, your thoughts on Route 28, our underdeveloped properties. I'm sure you've driven Route 28. I would love to hear your thoughts about that, and what, if you had an opportunity to change some things, what would you do?
So I've given that a little bit of thought, and it's interesting. I was driving Route 28 in Falmouth, and I was trying to figure out, what's the difference here? And I think that there's a density in Falmouth that we don't quite have here in Yarmouth, in that it's almost like a smile with a bunch of teeth knocked out. And so the village concepts that seem to be emerging are really, I think, smart, because they're building in some density, they're building in some walkability, they're building in some mixed use. And I think all of those things would be beneficial to that corridor. But I think, too, finding ways to, and I know it's a state highway, so this is kind of challenging, to make it more of a boulevard than a throughway, so that there's more opportunities for people to navigate across the street. There are more opportunities for vehicles to be moving more slowly through that space, because you kind of get this whipsaw thing going on where you're trying to find something as you're driving through it, and by the time you notice it, you've missed your opportunity to sort of turn into it, and then it's hard to find a place to sort of quickly find your way back. So I think a lot of the things that are being discussed about, upping the density, upping the walkability, all of those things will start contributing to making it work. I think the part that I don't have enough of a sensibility about, without having more opportunity to dig into it, is where the business community is, what they're willing to do, what their comfort level is, and then also what opportunities we have in working with the state to address some of the how the traffic patterns work there. So I'd have to learn a little bit more, but those are the things that strike me just immediately about what could happen there. It's like slow it down, dense it up a bit, and of course it sounds so easy, right? And it's obviously not, because if it was easy, you would have done it a million times already. So, but I look forward to it, and I think the parks that are being developed are really a huge boon. I think that, again, there's there's more there for people to enjoy as opposed, and potentially to walk from point to point.
Mark?
Thank you. What really excites you about this position and working for the town of Yarmouth?
Well, a couple of things really do. One thing that really excites me, because I've been in a ping pong environment. I've been, especially working in legislative affairs, it's like Gettysburg one day, Petersburg the next day, Acadia the next day. And this idea that I could just be in one place and really get to know it and really dig into it, and to have it be a place that is a lovely place on Cape Cod that has a lot of the elements that I've worked on for my entire career, the coastal resiliency questions, the historic preservation questions, recreation, the economic development component, housing, all of those things, that are elements of those host communities that I was always, planning curious about when I was working on the park side, really are here in Yarmouth. And so I think that that's really exciting. Another thing that really excites me about the position is implementation. So taking plans that you've developed, I know that there's still planning to do, but to begin moving those to implementation, I was always a little jealous when I finished up a plan in the Park Service and I handed it off to a superintendent, and then they were able to take it and run with it. And I was like, oh, I wish I could do that. So the implementation elements of this really excite me. I also just enjoy the nature of coordination and networking and putting people together and moving the ball forward. Those are all things that I just really enjoy doing and would love the opportunity to do that for this one singular wonderful place.
Thank you.
Ellen, recently we've seen a lot of resignations in our Economic and Community Development Committee that oversee the Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund. Mm-hmm. And we've determined that it would be wise for us to wait until this position is filled to go forward. How would you handle that challenge?
To reconstitute the board or the commission? I think that it's, I would have to look at how it's chartered, but, and see whether or not we need to re-examine that. But also to sort of think through who we want for representation on that board. If that's, and again, that could be already chartered, so I don't know, I don't know what my sideboards are in terms of what we can do with that. But it sounds like you potentially would want an open call to sort of see who might be interested in that engagement again. And I think you want to draw from as broad a population as possible in terms of the various economic interests. So you'd want the tourism community. You may also want people from the housing, sector and from, the preservation sector. There may be a broader set of interests than just, the business community. And again, I'm sort of shooting in the wind here because I don't have that much of a knowledge base. But I think even before we went through that process, I would want to understand more about what role this body plays and what role you would like it to play, because that obviously would play a significant role in how we want to reconstitute it and potentially reshape its charter. So,
thank you.
Thank you. We're very concerned about employment and the kind of employment that's high quality and gives benefits for Cape Cod residents who are year-round. If you had a chance to choose a business that would employ 25 people and drop it on Route 28, an area where you've obviously given a lot of attention, what would the business be?
That's interesting. I think there's the possibility of some kind of I'm thinking about different industries like the food industry on Cape Cod and the commercial kitchens. So some kind of incubator for potential commercial kitchens that support, restaurants. The other piece of the economy that I was recently learning more about, I don't know a lot about it, is this notion of the blue economy, and where, the Route 28's proximate to the shore. In some places, there may be opportunities for the kinds of companies that support, the development, the repair of engines for marine vessels, or other types of supporting operational gear for marine vessels, or even just something like the Woods Hole Group. Another one of those. Why should Falmouth have all the fun? Why couldn't we have something like that here? Because we're just as proximate to the water as they are. So I think that there could be a lot of opportunities for those kinds of things. The other thing too is to think about, while remote work seems to be drying up a little bit, this is, if we focus a lot on our quality of life and have resources, we're right near a regional airport, we're proximate to Providence and Boston, why not be an outpost for, a remote company that draws, people here, and the employer may not be directly here in Yarmouth, but maybe there's a pod of employees who are here in Yarmouth because this is just a great place to be, and we have great supporting services and access to transportation and things of that nature. So it's, again, just spitballing's kind of a gross term, but this is kind of thinking of it that way.
Okay, thank you.
I love it. All right. We have a possibility that it's just, let's just fantasize. We've got the possibility in this fantasy that there's a developer who's going to take some 40B money to do some development housing, and they do not want to abide by the architectural vision that Yarmouth wants to impose on them. How would you approach it, because the planning department is sort of under your wing, how are we going to affect our vision of what Route 28 should look like when the developers come in and are not willing to compromise?
We don't have to compromise. I think that's always my first thought is let's see where we can negotiate, right? Let's try to negotiate. But if there's a point where it really is something that we have to play hardball over and say, look, we're just not going to permit this. Or if you want this, then you have setbacks and screening and other things like that. And I do know in this universe of our need for affordable housing, that is, there's an attraction for us, for them to sort of pursue that kind of development. But, whatever leverage we have to sort of negotiate and push back, and I'm not sure, again, without digging in deep, what our leverage really is, and what site location we might be talking about, what candy we can put on the table, what sticks we can, bring to bear. But I think it should, if we're dealing with a situation like that, we should be as tough as they are, if we can be. But again, be prepared to negotiate.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm curious how you view the economic development director's position and basically department's role in working with the Chamber of Commerce.
So the Chamber obviously is one representation of the business community. I think that it manifests itself in other ways. The Chamber is not the town. It's a constituent within the town. And we obviously, as a constituent within the town, have an obligation to hear them out, to work collaboratively with them when we can. It's in our best interest if we can work collaboratively with them. But we also can't have it be the tail wagging the dog. So again, it's sort of this constant negotiation probably that has to happen in order to make sure that their needs are being met and that our needs are being met as a community. And hopefully there's a happy medium to be found there. But I also would encourage us to think about who else is representing the business community. Is everyone contained within the Chamber of Commerce, or are there other bodies out there that we can consult with, and also, not use as a club per se, but to use as some leverage, as we work with them, just to say, well, the Rotary is a little bit different in composition than you, and we're hearing a little bit something differently from here. Or there's also always a group of business members who don't join the chamber, but they still have an interest in what's going on in town. So I think that it's a bit of a dance to sort of see how they engage with us, but I also know in many instances they can be a little pushy, and they can be a little bit, this is our, you need us more than we need you, and that's not entirely true. And so we have to work collaboratively with them, and again, we're partners, they're constituents. It's a relationship that just needs to be cultivated.
In the interest of time, tell us something about yourself that we don't know, but that we should know.
I don't know. I guess we haven't talked about. One thing that I left off my resume, and I know that in the package, Sarah included it, was my work at the Sandwich Historical Commission. So I was a volunteer on that body for 2 separate occasions. I left for family reasons in both instances, but I had some good experiences with working on that board. And so in one instance, I had this great opportunity to work with one of our community resources, the Clark Haddard community building, which was falling into disrepair, and I got to be the front end of that process, engaging the public and coming up with a strategy for what we might want to have happen with that building. And then shortly after that, I dropped off the board to do more Swim Mom stuff. And then I came back on the board later on, a couple years later, and had the opportunity to work through some planning with the board, with the commission, and apply for a grant through the SHPO's office for an updated historic preservation plan. The grant wasn't successful, but it was a good process, and I had a good opportunity to talk with folks in the SHPO's office and get that off the ground. So that was a good experience. I was also very happy to represent the commission on the Community Preservation Board. Sadly, I had to leave that because that role, because I had to leave the commission because we had another family situation that I had to take care of, and I couldn't do everything. So I left, but I really enjoyed my time on the CPA. That was fantastic. I loved working on that particular effort.
Thank you.
Dorcas, anybody else have any questions?
Did you say Swim Mom?
I was a swim mom,
A
yes.
swim mom. Okay. Would you elaborate?
Dance mom, but a swim mom.
It's like, yeah, or a hockey mom or a soccer mom. No, my son began taking up competitive swimming, and then all of a sudden I lived at the pool. And so we did that for quite some time.
How old are your kids now?
My boys are 26 and 23.
Allowed to ask that?
No,
I'm not allowed to ask that.
That's okay.
please don't.
I saw Sarah go,
Don't.
never
No.
mind.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll
Swim
just erase
mom.
it.
I love
Erase
it.
it from the record. I will say, Mark, I think I saw you early on in my career at Cape Cod National Seashore Advisory Commission meetings. You frequently
Sounds
joined
like a
us for
place you
those.
might have been.
Yeah, I think we must have crossed paths there. I used to go to all of those meetings when I was in the district, when I wasn't in Washington.
Right. No,
And
I remember.
the advisory commission, you talk about collaboration, working the park and communities working together. That's a perfect model. It worked well, and the collaboration among between the federal government and local communities
It
was
a good-
impressive.
It was a good model, and it's one of the best in the system, actually, in terms of it being a collaborative body.
So who was the superintendent back then when I was there?
Andy Ringgold
Andy Ringgold.
and
wow.
Maria Burks, you might have also met.
Maria Burks.
Yep.
Outstanding superintendent.
Yep.
We could have a conversation all,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we don't, we're running out of time.
But in any
Those are
event,
some great
Ellen,
memories.
We're going to give you a few minutes to just tell us whatever you feel that we still need to know, or your closing statement, however you want to say it, but just take a few minutes of your time to wrap it up for us.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to appear before you tonight and to be considered for this position. I'm really thrilled. I'm excited by the prospect of this work and excited to have it be sort of a natural next chapter. If I had actually had the opportunity to stay with the Park Service and had an opportunity to sort of take on, say, a superintendent's role, this is the kind of work I would have been doing, and I would have been really happy to do that. But in this context, this is just a fantastic opportunity, and I'm very excited about it. So I hope that that this will all result in a real opportunity to come and work with you on a more permanent basis.
Well, thank you, Ellen. And I just want to take a minute before we conclude our meeting to thank Bob and Sarah, for putting forth 3 amazing candidates. Really, if there was a spot for them all on the team, it would be a wonderful thing for Yarmouth. So, we have a difficult decision to make. I don't know if I mentioned it to you. I mentioned it to the other candidates that we won't be discussing or making any decision tonight, but we will take this up at our next meeting.
Okay, wonderful.
Great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time.
We very much appreciate you coming here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will take a motion from the board.
So moved to adjourn.
Second?
Any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Okey dokey, go get some.